Victor stood still, his expression a mix of fury and possibly embarrassment. He tightened his fists, visibly battling the urge to erupt. Victor, at last unraveling, rose suddenly, sending his empty champagne glass crashing to the floor. "Do you believe you hold a superior position over me?" he called out, capturing the gaze of all those present in the cabin. "Perched there with your witty remarks, pretending to have all the answers about existence, yet you remain oblivious to the true essence of living in the real world." The passengers were struck mute, taken aback by Victor's sudden eruption. The flight attendant swiftly moved in, aiming to ease the tension in the air. Keanu stayed in his seat, gazing at Victor with a serene expression. He patiently listened to the man until he had completed his thoughts before offering his own response. "I don't think I'm better than you," he said, his voice steady but kind. "Sometimes, it's essential to pause and reflect on what truly holds significance. Victor, there's no need for you to demonstrate anything to anyone." The words appeared to resonate profoundly with Victor. He was panting, yet there was an undeniable quality in Keanu's voice that compelled him to take a seat once more. He turned away, appearing more resigned than furious. Victor remained still, the resonance of Keanu's words lingering in his thoughts. He had never experienced such a sense of exposure, such vulnerability in the presence of so many others. Yet, he remained unaware that the most challenging, or possibly the most rewarding, was still ahead. The flight pressed on in a weighty silence following the confrontation. Victor stayed in his chair, deliberately steering clear of Keanu's gaze. Yet it was clear that he was profoundly disturbed. Keanu, in contrast, appeared utterly at ease, as though nothing had transpired. A moment later, the flight attendant came over to Keanu, wearing a courteous smile. The sound of her voice captivated everyone in the cabin. "Mr. Reeves, the captain has requested that I convey to you that your connection in Tokyo is confirmed. He extends his warmest regards as well." The name Reeves resonated throughout first class. Some passengers, who had been silently watching until that moment, suddenly widened their eyes in surprise. A low whisper started to circulate within the cabin, and at that moment, Victor became completely still. "Reeves?" he whispered, as if struggling to accept the reality. "Is it Keanu Reeves?" Keanu offered a courteous nod to the flight attendant, expressing his gratitude, while remaining largely indifferent to the surrounding chaos. He glanced at Victor, who regarded him with an expression that suggested he was witnessing a specter. "Is there an issue, Victor?" Keanu inquired, a subtle smile playing on his lips. Victor parted his lips, yet words eluded him. He scanned the surroundings, aware of the other passengers casting curious and, in certain instances, disapproving looks in his direction. He appeared utterly bewildered. Victor settled into his seat, an unmistakable tension evident in his posture. He started to murmur some phrases, attempting to rationalize his behavior. I was completely unaware." "Well, you never mentioned your identity," he finally remarked. "I was unaware of that. You were yourself." Keanu maintained a steady tone, yet his words carried a sense of resolve. "I didn't believe it was needed. I typically refrain from using my name as a means of introduction." Victor paused, his silence stretching out as he gathered his thoughts, ready to articulate his defense. "Listen, I never intended to upset you. I was unaware of the identity of the person I was conversing with." Keanu exhaled softly, leaning in just a bit. "Victor, your words remain unchanged, regardless of the fact that you now know my name. The truth remains constant, regardless of your audience. Your approach to treating others will determine the outcome." The words rendered Victor utterly speechless. He cast a glance at Keanu, then shifted his gaze to the other passengers, who appeared increasingly engrossed in the scene that was developing. The shame etched across his features was unmistakable. The stillness in the cabin was interrupted by Keanu, who chose to wrap up the discussion with a concluding lesson. "Indeed, Victor, the challenges of life weigh heavily on us all. It's disheartening to see individuals attempting to elevate themselves by diminishing others." Victor gave a subtle nod, finding himself at a loss for words. For the first time, he appeared to truly contemplate his actions. Keanu reclined in his chair, signaling the conclusion of their discussion. Meanwhile, Victor sat still, his gaze fixed on his hands, as if he were revisiting each word in his thoughts. Victor faced not only Keanu but the very essence of reality. He started to understand that in his effort to belittle another, he had exposed more of his own character than he had ever meant to. The remainder of the flight was enveloped in a profound stillness. Victor, who previously exuded confidence in the space, now appeared noticeably uneasy. He struggled to make eye contact with Keanu or the other passengers. The pride he held at the beginning of the journey had vanished, supplanted by an emotion that resonates more with embarrassment. As the minutes ticked away, Victor found himself unable to shake off Keanu's words. All he expressed appeared so straightforward, yet concurrently it resonated profoundly. Victor started to reflect on his actions, remembering the countless occasions he had formed opinions about others without making an effort to understand them. Perhaps he is correct, he whispered to himself, unaware of his own thoughts. He cast a quick look at Keanu, who was absorbed in his book, seemingly unfazed by the events around him. This only heightened the significance of the situation. Keanu had shown no inclination to demonstrate his worth. He allowed his deeds to convey his message. As the plane started its descent, Victor finally found the bravery to speak up. He glanced at Keanu, his gaze still cast downward, and murmured, "I need to apologize. Not for what I expressed, but rather due to your identity, and because I acted with arrogance. I behaved foolishly." Keanu gazed at him, his demeanor as serene as always. He paused for a moment before replying, "Thank you for your apology. Yet, beyond that, I wish for you to gain insights from this experience." Victor nodded slowly, understanding that those words represented a chance for transformation. Then Keanu continued, "Sometimes what we seek most in the world is what we discover least within ourselves. I trust you'll discover what truly holds significance." Victor held his tongue, yet Keanu's words lingered in his thoughts. He sensed that this moment could ignite a transformation within him, should he permit it. Upon disembarking, Victor remained motionless in the terminal, his gaze fixed on Keanu as he walked away. He noticed admirers subtly making their way towards him to offer greetings and capture moments in photographs. Keanu welcomed everyone with calmness and a sincere smile, embodying neither rush nor superiority. His simplicity and kindness clearly radiated from his core. Victor cast his gaze upon his own hands and let out a deep sigh. He realized a transformation was essential. Keanu's words lingered in his thoughts, a poignant reminder that true value lies not in one's status, but in the way one treats others. As Keanu vanished into the throng at the airport, Victor experienced an unfamiliar sensation. Hope. Perhaps that meeting was more than mere chance. Perhaps it was an opportunity for a fresh beginning. Ultimately, we all bear decisions that define our identity. Are we existing to seek the approval of others or to evolve into our best selves? Keanu's words impart a distinct lesson. Genuine success transcends mere accomplishments or displays. It lies in the meaningful influence you impart on the world and the lives you touch. In moments of judgment or conflict, keep in mind that respect and humility are timeless virtues. Maybe the transformation you wish to witness in the world must begin within yourself. If this tale resonated with you, there are plenty more that will touch your soul. Tap the screen to discover additional tales of hope, kindness, and strength. As she poured another round of drinks, Victor chose to press on with the dialogue, or more accurately, his series of provocations. "You see, life resembles a first-class flight," he started, elegantly waving his champagne glass. "Put in the effort, claim your place, and then relish the rewards. Yet, it appears that certain individuals are present solely due to a stroke of fortune." Keanu set his water bottle down on the seat tray and finally turned to look at Victor. His gaze remained steady, yet there was an unmistakable shift, suggesting he was prepared to engage more openly. Whether by chance or through effort, we all find ourselves in the same destination when the plane touches down, right? Keanu spoke, his voice calm yet resolute. The onlookers nearby, who had once been quietly watching, started to focus their gaze more intently. The cabin was enveloped in an almost oppressive silence. A handful of exchanged glances revealed the delicate tension simmering between the two. Victor smiled, attempting to mask the fact that the response had affected him in some manner. I wouldn't quite put it that way. Certain individuals operate on a different plane altogether. Not everyone appreciates the significance of being present. Keanu leaned in a bit, folding his arms across his chest. In my view, the significance of this place, as he indicated with a sweep of his hand, lies not in possessions, but in the way we interact with those around us. The expression lingered in the atmosphere, resonating with an unmistakable authenticity. A few passengers offered subtle nods, while others shared knowing looks of approval. Victor, in contrast, appeared uneasy. He attempted to chuckle it away, yet his anxiety was beginning to reveal itself. That's quite clever. Exceptional personal development philosophy. Perhaps you ought to think about delivering motivational speeches, he remarked, attempting to maintain a sarcastic tone. Keanu offered a brief smile before turning his gaze ahead, effectively closing the conversation without uttering another word. His tranquility appeared to resonate more profoundly than any spoken language. The surrounding passengers started to respond in understated ways. Some murmured among themselves, while others cast disapproving glances at Victor. A few rows back, seemingly aware of Keanu's presence, chose to remain quiet, honoring his privacy while clearly appreciating how he managed the moment. Victor, on the other hand, started to sense that he was under scrutiny, and it was far from flattering. His posture, once brimming with confidence, began to waver subtly, yet he remained unwilling to acknowledge that he had relinquished control. Victor believed he was gaining the upper hand in the argument, yet the responses from those around him painted a contrasting picture. He remained unaware that the events about to unfold would challenge his very notions of status, power, and respect. As the flight attendant glided through the aisle, gathering discarded glasses, Victor appeared resolute in his quest to triumph in the debate he had initiated. Have you ever noticed something amusing? Victor pressed on. Those who lack tangible achievements often find themselves discussing concepts such as humility and simplicity. Have you ever observed that? Keanu inclined his body just a touch, locking eyes with Victor. It seems that those who often boast about their possessions are frequently the ones who experience the greatest sense of emptiness within. The words lingered in the atmosphere for a brief moment, leaving Victor momentarily taken aback, grappling to formulate a reply. He parted his lips, yet the precise words eluded him at that moment. Onlookers nearby shared knowing looks, a few clearly captivated by Keanu's adept response to the taunts. Listen, I don't intend to come off as impolite, Victor remarked, regaining his composure at last. Yet, the world is fiercely competitive. Without revealing your talents, you risk being overlooked by others. That's simply the way it goes. Keanu reclined in his chair and responded with a measured tone. Perhaps. However, I believe that genuine success doesn't require loud proclamations. Conveys its own message. Keanu's words resonated deeply within the cabin. A handful of passengers acknowledged the situation with subtle nods, while others cast disapproving glances at Victor, who evidently was not accustomed to facing such challenges. At this juncture, the ambience in first class had transformed. A considerable number of passengers were now completely engrossed in the dialogue between Keanu and Victor. An elderly gentleman nearby shifted his gaze, scrutinizing the scene with a disapproving shake of his head, clearly unimpressed by Victor's actions. Victor, conscious of the gazes upon him, attempted to mask his annoyance, yet rather than retreating, he delivered another sharp retort. Inexpensive contemplation. It may seem appealing, but reality operates differently. Keanu regarded him, his serene demeanor unwavering. People shape the reality we live in, Victor. Ultimately, our treatment of others reveals more about our true selves than any other action we take. Victor appeared to be quite uneasy with the reply. He cast a quick look around, realizing that the passengers' focus had shifted away from him. Some murmured quietly to one another, while others fixed their gaze on him, their faces reflecting a spectrum of intrigue to discontent. Victor started to understand that his approach of asserting control was failing. He believed he was in control, yet the weight of Keanu's words was shifting the views of the passengers, and maybe even altering his own perspective. The atmosphere in the cabin was thick with tension. Victor folded his arms, attempting to conceal the unease stirred by Keanu's remarks, yet his annoyance was beginning to surface. Keanu, on the other hand, appeared completely unfazed by the ambience. He faced Victor squarely and shattered the stillness with a composed voice. "I see your point, Victor, and I get where you're coming from. The world often presents a fierce competition, yet I've come to realize that the desire to demonstrate one's worth to others often stems from a more profound source, an insecurity, a personal conflict within." Victor knitted his brow, caught in a dilemma between seeing this as a challenge or a sincere effort to engage. "Conflict within?" He chuckled. "Your perspective seems to be quite off the mark, and I must say, it's far from accurate." Keanu offered a subtle smile and gently shook his head. "Perhaps. However, I've encountered numerous individuals who believed that success was solely defined by external perceptions. At their core, they were merely seeking to satisfy an emptiness within themselves." The words struck Victor with an unforeseen impact. He paused, his fingers toying with the wedding band on his finger, lost in thought. However, he swiftly regained his protective demeanor. "That's not who I am. Everything I've accomplished has come from my own effort, and I don't require anyone to dictate how I should live my life." Keanu maintained his composure, as though he was thoughtfully selecting his forthcoming phrases. He studied Victor for a brief moment before proceeding. "I'm not suggesting you didn't put in the effort. Rather, I believe we often become so engrossed in showcasing our accomplishments that we overlook the importance of self-reflection. What do we become in the absence of all this?" Victor tightened his lips, a clear sign of his discomfort. The inquiry reverberated within his thoughts, yet he remained reluctant to acknowledge that it resonated deeply. "Who are we, really?" He responded with a sardonic chuckle. "We are defined by our creations. Without them, we are lost." Keanu maintained his stare, his demeanor shifting to one of greater gravity. "I hold a different perspective. I believe our essence is shaped by our contributions to others rather than our possessions. Ultimately, the external displays we present to the world are of lesser significance compared to the values we nurture within ourselves." He gestured toward his heart, and his voice echoed through the cabin. A few passengers exchanged discreet nods, while Victor seemed to wrestle with his own composure. "That's simple for you to claim," Victor remarked, nearly getting up from his chair. "You have no idea who I am or the journey I've taken to reach this point." Keanu replied with conviction, maintaining a calm demeanor. "You're correct, I may not be familiar with your narrative, yet I believe it's unnecessary for me to grasp it fully to recognize that when an individual feels compelled to proclaim their accomplishments, it often stems from a desire to conceal something deeper. Apprehension, uncertainty, solitude." The declaration struck with undeniable force. Keanu Reeves stood in the first-class line, his attire unpretentious, creating a striking juxtaposition against the opulence surrounding him. A man observed him with contempt, his arrogance barely concealed. The events that unfolded next would render everyone on that plane utterly speechless and alter one life forever. Before we proceed with this narrative, please share your location with us. If you find tales like this captivating, consider subscribing to the channel, as we have another unique story lined up for you tomorrow. The airport in Los Angeles buzzed with its usual hustle and bustle. Individuals arriving and departing, dialogues intertwining, and bags wheeling about in every direction. Amidst the chaos, a man remained composed in the first-class line. The individual in question was Keanu Reeves. He wore a plaid shirt, faded jeans, and scuffed boots, embodying a casual simplicity. He bore a backpack that seemed to have journeyed across the globe alongside him. He possessed no extravagant qualities, and maybe that was why he remained in the shadows. However, those who observed him more intently could perceive an unusual quality within him. It wasn't merely his attire, but the tranquility he radiated. He appeared to be an individual who maintained his tranquility despite the turmoil surrounding him. Amidst the hurried and anxious crowd, Keanu remained a picture of calmness. He took in every detail around him, fully immersing himself in the experience. He was unfazed by the stares or the striking difference between him and the other travelers. Victor Harding stood right behind him in the line. Victor stood in stark contrast to Keanu. He donned a tailored suit, gleaming shoes, and a fragrance that commanded notice. Each gesture he executed appeared meticulously planned, as if he sought to convey to the world his significance. His gaze swiftly moved along the line, and upon reaching Keanu, he couldn't restrain his remark. "First class, is it?" Victor remarked with a wry grin. "One can never predict who might appear in this place lately." Keanu turned his head and regarded him, maintaining a composed demeanor. Indeed, the world is brimming with unexpected twists. Victor's brow furrowed momentarily. He appeared to anticipate a more substantial response, something that would validate his perceptions of the individual standing before him. Yet Keanu remained silent, as though the remark held no significance. Victor chose to delve deeper. "Listen, no offense intended, but you don't strike me as someone who takes to the skies like this," he remarked with a light chuckle. "It's uncommon to encounter someone so relaxed in first class." The time to embark had come. The first-class line started to advance, and Keanu and Victor, silent and purposeful, moved along with their tickets ready. Victor strode forward with unwavering confidence, each step deliberate and assured, while Keanu appeared unfazed by the surrounding chaos, maintaining his serene and steady rhythm. As they stepped onto the plane, an unforeseen event unfolded. As Victor took his seat, he glanced at his ticket again, and when he looked up, he noticed Keanu comfortably settling into the seat right beside him. "You've got to be kidding me," Victor muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. He settled next to Keanu and released a soft laugh, as though the circumstances were amusing. Out of all the locations imaginable, it had to be this one. Keanu regarded him with a serene expression, offering a subtle smile. "It seems we are journeying together," he responded with courtesy. Victor folded his arms, attempting to mask his unease. It wasn't merely the reality of sitting beside Keanu. It was the realization that the individual he had assessed moments earlier was now occupying the same privileged space as him. He found it difficult to articulate the reason, yet there was something about Keanu's presence that stirred a sense of unease within him, an unsettling feeling he couldn't shake off. As the economy class passengers completed their boarding, Victor chose to initiate a conversation, though not in a cordial manner. "So, what do you do for a living?" he inquired, his tone relaxed, as if he already had an inkling of the response but sought validation. Keanu, shifting his backpack beneath the seat ahead, glanced up and replied succinctly, "I work in film." Victor lifted his eyebrows, conveying a sense of astonishment. I understand. Advertisements? Minor details?" Keanu offered a subtle smile and gently shook his head. "Perhaps something along those lines." Victor chuckled heartily. "It's fascinating to observe how individuals seek to discover their own niche, don't you think? However, there are occasions when specific spaces simply aren't suited for all, such as first class, for example." Keanu regarded him for a brief moment, evaluating the circumstances, yet kept his composure intact. "We all have our unique roles," Keanu responded, "and at times it's precisely in the spot we find ourselves." Victor chuckled softly. "That's pleasant, somewhat reflective even, but reality isn't that straightforward." Keanu remained silent for a moment, turning his gaze back to the window, signaling that the conversation had reached its conclusion. However, Victor still had more to accomplish. "Do you realize something?" Victor leaned in a bit closer to him. "While you may find yourself in this moment, there are treasures that wealth cannot procure. Some locations will always elude true ownership by specific individuals." This time, Keanu remained silent. He regarded him for a brief moment, his face reflecting a blend of calmness and resolute determination. The gaze conveyed a depth of meaning that surpassed any spoken language. Victor, understanding that his attempt at provocation had not yielded the expected outcome, reclined in his seat with a contented grin. He believed he held the advantage in the scenario, yet the reality was that everything was merely starting. Victor believed he held the reins, yet Keanu's serene demeanor concealed an unpredictable depth. As each minute ticked by, what initially appeared to be a straightforward dialogue began to evolve into something far more significant. As the aircraft ascended into the sky, the in-flight service commenced. The flight attendant glided through first class, presenting drinks, while Victor ensured he caught her eye. "A glass of champagne, please," he said, his smile radiating confidence, something that embodies the uniqueness of this seat. The flight attendant, well-versed in handling challenging passengers, acknowledged with a polished smile. As Keanu stepped up, he offered a straightforward request. "Only water, thank you." Victor seized the chance to share his thoughts. He regarded Keanu with that familiar sense of superiority and emitted a soft chuckle. "Water?" he inquired, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Don't tell me you're planning to squander the experience of flying first class with just water." Keanu accepted the bottle from the flight attendant with a composed demeanor, saying, "I'm fine with this." At times, the essence of simplicity suffices. Victor squinted, attempting to unravel the solution, but swiftly chose to resist. Sure, that might be suitable for those who are content with mediocrity. Not everyone is destined to savor the finest experiences life presents. Keanu lifted the bottle to his lips and took a measured sip, pausing before he replied. Other passengers started to take note of Victor's provocative tone. Yet with Keanu seeming unfazed, no one stepped in. Perhaps what is considered the best varies for each individual, Keanu finally remarked, maintaining his usual tranquility. Victor was not pleased with the response. He inhaled deeply, striving to steer the dialogue with composure. Perhaps those who express such sentiments simply haven't experienced what truly holds significance. There are aspects of life that remain elusive for some individuals, as you might understand. The flight attendant, occupied with another passenger, threw a subtle glance their way, contemplating whether to intervene, yet she observed that Keanu was managing the situation adeptly. He offered only a faint smile before redirecting his gaze to the window. Victor, in contrast, appeared to lack contentment. He aimed to stir things up further, yet he was starting to understand that Keanu was a formidable adversary to unsettle. Victor believed he was triumphing in the argument, yet for the onlookers nearby, his hubris was growing more and more unsettling. As Keanu maintained his composure, Victor stood on the brink of confronting a truth that would irrevocably alter his perceptions of humanity. The flight attendant made her way back to the area of the cabin where Keanu and Victor were sitting.